There is the hardcover. Sometimes we refer to this also as the case for the book. So the hardcover or the case is the outside of the book. We're actually going to be putting it together in two parts. So this is the hardcover. Yours will hopefully look a whole lot better than this. And then so this is the hardcover. And then the book block is the part that is actually the pages of the book. So your book block will look something like this, and it will just be all the pages of the book put together, okay? So we have those two parts of the book, and then the spine or the hinge is the spine is the part that we're going to use the book cloth for. That's actually what holds it together. There's also another little piece of board in the middle that we'll talk about, this part of the spine. And then the hinge is, for us, going to be the end papers. The hinge is what attaches the book block to the hard case, okay? Some of you have had me before in class, some of you have not. If you have questions, please don't, just shout out when you hear a pause in the talk, just when I slow down, just shout them out. We're going to be using as an example today this beautiful book that was designed by Christina Arce, who is a junior, going to be a senior. And she did a beautiful job binding her book. She has a little bit of an alternative cover, and many of you might have that as well. So just to sort of give you an idea, you can see how this is going to work. So here's her hard cases on the outside. She's got book cloth on the spine. She also put book cloth here and then used a paper sort of a belly band, but a fake belly band. A belly band would actually go around the book and you'd have to remove it in order to open the book. But it could go this way or this way. In her case, she just made it permanent by tucking it behind the end papers, right? So here's her end paper, and you can see that that is what is actually glued to the book, okay, to the hard case, right? And then in the back, this is going to be the tricky part. There's actually a pocket. So you can see that's what allows the book to open and to close, is that little piece of paper that slides in and out of the pocket. And that's really important. If you don't get that to work correctly, your book will either be permanently closed, or if you're lucky, it'll open like this far, right? So you want to make sure that you have that pocket functioning. The things that can go wrong with the pocket are that your paper might not slip and slide easily enough inside of it, or if you make the pocket the wrong size, it's just way too stiff. So we're going to talk about how to make that perfectly in the end. Okay, everybody clear so far? Okay, so we're going to start on the first page of the handout. And this handout was made a couple of years, and it's sort of ago by a KUCD alum, Sean Kostick, who actually taught here for a semester, and then we've kind of adapted it as the years have gone on. But it's very clear about how to do it, and his method was so perfect. And what I really love about it is that it has the minimal amount of measuring, because I really hate to measure things. So it allows you to use your tools to measure. Some of the directions I'm going to give you are not in here, so just to keep that in mind. Now, you do need a ruler, but notice my ruler doesn't even have measurements on it, so it doesn't even really work. I don't know whose this is. That's not a good way to start. Can someone carefully grab that from the other side?
Is it a knife?
Yeah, of course. At least it didn't land on my foot. Thank you. Okay, so to start, you're going to have printouts that look something like this, right? So we've got crop marks, fold marks, and bleed all the way around, right? Crop marks, fold marks, and bleed. The bleed is your fudge factor, so you can screw up, right? Everybody's going to screw up. It's a given. So this gives you license to screw up a little bit, and no one will know the difference. Now, when you get your printouts, hopefully yours won't all look the same. Mine are all the same because I just printed the same page over and over again. But the first thing you want to do is trim them out so that they're all even and they're all going to line up perfectly. And the way to do that is to use the markings that are already here. We don't want to crop them out on the crop marks yet, because then you would have to be superhuman to get it absolutely perfectly put together. What we want to do is to make some sort of a perfect cut that's going to line up outside of the live area, which is the inside of the page. And there are two different ways to do that. One way is to use the method that's here on the page. If you have room to do this, let me talk about it in two different ways. Number 2, it says trim each spread out to the outside edge of the crop marks. So you can just take your ruler, line out the outside edge of the crop marks. And if you can't see what I'm doing right now, you need to stand up and move so that you can see. But I have the ruler now just lined up to the outside of each of those crop marks. And then I'm going to trim. Can you hear that my knife is dull? Yeah. So before you start, what's the first thing you probably should do that I didn't do? You said it. New blade. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, sir. A new blade. This is an old blade, and so it's going to do a crappy job. So get a new blade. Wash your hands. Put some quiet music on. Put the cat out of the room. The other thing you can do, if you have the liberty of some more space, is to actually line up the ruler with your crop marks like this, but trim on the opposite side of the ruler. And did you notice that I turned my paper so my ruler is always over the live area? That's really important because then your knife can't slip into the live area, okay? So there are two different ways to skin the cat that we just put out of the room. Okay? So you want to make sure that all the way around your sheets you have an even amount of space, because this is how we're going to determine how we're going to line these up. It's already stressing you out, I heard that. No, it's okay. This is a stressful thing. But that's why we do a practice one first, right? So you can screw up. You're going to screw up. If you go into it knowing that ahead of time, it'll make the stress a whole lot less, right? There's nothing to stress about because you know it's going to be bad. That's why we do a practice. When you do the second one, it'll be perfect. That's when you can be stressed.
We're also going to do the demos, or the workshops. So we'll all be in the same room messing up together, which is a lot less stressful. So we'll set together some workshops where we can practice and all do it together.
So I'm doing 2 of these because my book has only 2 spreads in it. You're going to be doing this over and over again for each of your spreads. I know, this is the exciting part. Someone told me a good joke in class the other day. And you can all guess the answer to it because it's that kind of joke. How many tickles does it take to tickle an octopus? 10 tickles. You heard that one. My other favorite clean joke, I only know clean jokes. My other favorite joke is, why was Cinderella such a bad baseball player? Really, no one knows this one? Because she had a pumpkin for a coach. And she was always late for the ball. So now we have all of our spreads trimmed out to the crop marks. You guys see how that works, right? Okay. So the next step is really important, and that is to score. Okay, we've all made cards in kindergarten out of construction paper, right? So if we just fold construction paper, we get a fold that looks like this, right? And I do this to exaggerate because construction paper is really crappy, cheap paper. So when you try to fold it, you get this lumpy, crummy fold. And you get that because the fibers in the paper are really unorganized. And so when you fold paper, it's all these fibers, right? And so when you go to fold them, they all have to crumple up to move, right? And can you see how the ones on the outside have to sort of stretch over the ones on the inside, and all kinds of weird things are happening to those fibers. the same thing is happening with better paper, only on a smaller scale. So even this better paper, when I go to fold it, is going to be weird. So I have to score the paper in order to get it to fold smoothly. And there are two different ways to score. You guys made those boxes, right, earlier this semester, so you all learned about scoring then. And so you know that if you want a really super clean fold, you actually have to break the fibers on the outside so that your paper will break and it won't have to stretch so far. So basically, you're folding like this instead of like this, right? So you get a much cleaner fold. The problem is with a book, if you score with a knife, you're actually breaking the surface of the paper. You're breaking through the paper fibers, so you're compromising the strength of the paper. So that when you fold and unfold that book a couple of times, it's going to fall apart eventually and tear. So what we have to do instead is use a bone folder to do the scoring. And what that's going to do is just compress the paper at the fold so that it will bend and fold easily. Instead of the paper won't have to, the fibers won't have to stretch quite so far. So if you remember, when you score with a knife, you score on the peak, and when you score with a bone folder, you score in the valley. So I'm going to actually score on the front of the paper. I'm lining up the two fold marks, and when I line things up, I want to make sure that I'm actually lined up. If I line up the ruler right on the fold, this bone folder has some thickness to it. So it's going to actually put my score on the wrong side of the fold. So I have to sort of adjust for that. And now I'm just pressing on the paper to get it to fold, to score. And then I'll fold it and sort of burnish it down with my bone folder. So now you can see I have a beautiful clean fold, right? And my spreads are going to be in reader's spreads, so they look exact. That should look just like the way you want it to look when you open up the book. So I'm going to do that to all of my spreads. And by the way, you're going to do the same thing with your two sets of end papers. So if you've printed those in a separate document, some of you are because you're printing those on a different kind of paper. You would be doing all of this to your end pages as well. Okay, so now I'm going to have one of these for each of my spreads, right? Now notice how off my cut is. Can you guys see that? Right? It's pretty bad, but it's not going to matter in the end, because what I'm about to do next is to show exactly where my cuts are going to go. Now, I could do this on a light table. I could use rulers, but I am lazy and I hate all those things. So I'm going to use my X-Acto knife to make the marks. And if you notice on your handout, it's number 3. It says trace a line on the back of the first end paper and the last end paper. Okay? You only really need it on the first end paper. So if you want to make a note of that, what you're going to do is take the X-Acto knife and just poke it through your crop marks. And remember that the thinner your crop marks are, the more accurate your whole document's going to be. So I make them 1/4 of a point or 1/2 a point. 1 point is pretty fat, and so now I've got the holes poked through, and I did that so that I could see them on the opposite side. Okay, so if you look carefully in each of the corners, you can see those teeny tiny little spots. Can you guys see those that I poked through? And I'm just connecting the dots. That's all I have to do now, is connect those two little holes that I made through the paper, since I can see them on the wrong side. This makes the rest of the marks that I made on the page totally unimportant. Now again, I should be covering the live area. And in the end, it should look like this.